Ollie Ollie Oxenfree. Like, guys, seriously? I cannot find these SCPs. Whether they're really good at hiding or constantly emitting some sort of amnestic compound, they are just impossible to locate. Good thing I've got a handy list of some of the best. That's right, it's time for the top 5 SCP monsters that can't be found, part 2. Let's get right to it. Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-055. How the hell are you supposed to find something that you straight up can't remember? Like, it's gonna be pretty difficult, right? What if nobody on Earth could ever remember it? That would add a few extra layers of challenge onto that now, wouldn't it? So it stands to reason that SCP-055 can be found. Like, technically it can be found, but nobody would remember finding it or be able to guide anyone else on the path to finding it. Hell, the fact that any documentation exists at all is a miracle, and even the official entry basically just says, we have no idea where this is, what it does, or how to find it, or even how it got here. There could be anything in the unnamed, unlabeled containment container. Could be nothing, too. It is possible that whatever this thing is has long since left Foundation custody, but left behind the amnestic, anti-memetic properties to ensure that nobody's gonna come looking for it. How does one wrap their head around the knowledge of such a thing? Jeez. SCP-055 is what the good folks up top like to call a self-keeping secret. No matter what, if you encounter any information about this thing, it'll drain out of your brain in no time. No explanations as to why this happens have cropped up, likely due to the nature of it. Every once in a while, Foundation folks find out that this is still around and have a little freak out. However, the panic never lasts long because, well, they forget pretty quickly. I can't guarantee this is a monster, but I also can't guarantee that it isn't a monster. Funny how that works. So with all of the knowable, controllable, horrifying dangers currently being contained by the Foundation, this one is probably one we should be most worried about, simply because there's no way to know what it could be up to, or what it already was up to. But because it's always being forgotten, nothing can or will ever be done about it. So if finding all these SCPs was on your bucket list, I'd say forget it. See what I did there? Actually, I'd prefer if you didn't remember that ham-fisted attempt at humor. But I'm not anomalous, so that probably won't happen anytime soon. Great. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-2329. If you've ever felt a little lost wandering through a neighborhood, this SCP might speak to you. You know that feeling. Every house looks the same and all the streets start to blend together. Worse yet, you haven't seen another person for ages. Bedroom communities, the worst, right? Well, here's the thing. SCP-2329 looks the same as other buildings for a reason. The Foundation has ensured that there are no discerning features on this structure to keep folks from investigating. The reason no people seem to be around is a little different though. It's a 6-story, 60-room apartment building, and everything seems pretty normal about it. In fact, the Foundation has even managed to keep everything to code based on the municipal requirements. It functions totally normally and nothing seems out of place. But nobody ever seems to be home. Odd. There's a reason that nobody's around though. Yep, it's anomalous, and in the weirdest possible way. Anyone who is inside this building will be unable to observe any other human being that is also in the building. No matter what, whether you're told someone else is around or if you seem to be occupying the exact same space as the other person present, there will be no way to see or sense that individual. Weird, eh? And nothing seems wrong about this either. Like, somebody could place an item right in front of you while in this apartment building and it would essentially appear out of nowhere, and then you'd think to yourself, I must have missed it when I first walked into the room. The Foundation did a test where they marked out a 10-meter line on the floor and had 2 people walk it end to end at the same time. Neither person was alerted to the other person's presence and they both walked the line. At the end of the test, each subject was recorded to have walked 10.2 meters, even though they claimed to be right on the line the entire time. So even when occupying the same space, people in the house instinctively avoided actually interacting with each other. Back in the day, police would even refuse to investigate any crimes or mishaps in the apartment because every time they would show up, nobody seemed to be around, nothing was out of place. So good luck finding this one, it's gonna blend in with all the other buildings just fine. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-1467. Well, it's still possible to find this one, but soon enough it will fade from everyone's minds and become impossible to recall. Even now, it's a real challenge to keep 1467 around. It's a 47-year-old man who needs to constantly reaffirm its own existence or it will fade from reality. If it stops reaffirming itself for a while, it gradually becomes less perceivable over time. This effect also spreads to objects around it, making it somewhat difficult to keep tabs on. 1467 doesn't know how this started to happen, but claims that the anomalous behavior started after he lost his wife and child in a car accident. To cope, he began doing things like constantly checking his pulse, writing descriptions of himself on his body, and reaffirming who he was. The Foundation has looked around for acquaintances, but come up short. Most people who actually had interacted with him at one point or another can't remember anything solid, and if this keeps up, all the affirmations won't be enough to tether this SCP to reality. By the end of the century, this man will have totally disappeared and will likely have been wiped from most people's memories. Absolutely tragic. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-2521. Some SCPs can't be found, and it's a bummer. Like, it would be cool to interact with the anomaly and find out more about it, but 2521 is not such a case. It would be excellent if this remained hidden for the rest of time so nobody had to deal with it anymore. See, 2521 is a very unique SCP. It wants to erase all evidence of itself. It can appear wherever information about itself is and remove it. So anything written down about 2521 will be taken care of by the anomaly. Anyone who speaks about 2521 out loud will be brought to an unknown location, never to be seen again. Any audio or video recordings of it or information concerning it will be taken away, and nobody seems to know where it originates from or where it takes all of the information or information carriers. But there is one way to communicate about this SCP. It doesn't seem to be able to recognize symbols or pictures. So if you set up a wordless infographic full of clip art and symbolism, you can communicate about it, which is exactly what the Foundation ended up doing. They put together a file about this anomaly while skillfully managing to avoid actually calling it what it is. So by me interpreting these images and symbols and relaying that information to you, I'm screwed, and so is anyone else watching. So let's hope this remains unfound. And finally, at number 1, we've got SCP-1730. So what the hell did happen to Site-13? Like, it was in Texas for a little while, but then that thing with the Thresher happened, and nobody really knows what went down. Loads of reports and MTF exploration logs, but the thing is gone. Who's gonna corroborate that? Maybe it'll be back someday, but for now, all we can do is pontificate. Like I said, Site-13 used to be a large Foundation complex near the US-Mexico border, and before that, it was situated in Nome, Alaska. The exact method of transportation it used to get it from Site A to Site B is a mystery, but then again, the whole situation is. So it went from Nome, Alaska to Big Bend Ranch, Texas, and now it's in the ether. Something happened in this enormous dilapidated research center that caused it to bend reality, and now we might never find it again. And that's not even scratching the surface of all the wild stuff that happened within the walls of Site-13. What a nightmare, right? We had anomalies tested to the point that they turned into awful black sludge. We had strange no-clip style reality glitches that made it impossible to navigate. All sorts of terrifying messages were scrawled upon the walls like bleed, not my body, and death here. All thanks to director Emerson. Don't worry though, all this horrifying mess is gone now. It's probably in another dimension, causing problems for alternate dimension versions of ourselves. But not us. So if we can be sure of one thing, it's that it can't be found right now. Sheesh. It's like the world's worst game of I Spy. You can look and look, but you're not gonna find anything. In the end, it's probably safer that way. So what did you think of the list? Have you found any of these SCPs? Do you know any others that are impossible to locate? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more iridescent ones from the top 5 horror monsters that could be SCPs. Shark Snack says the grabbers from Grabbers would definitely make a good SCP. Oh, definitely. I can picture it now. The discovery logs, detailing a drunken night and a bunch of dead Foundation folk, and the drunkest guy survives, so he writes it all down, but it doesn't make any sense because he's drunk. Project Reed says, well, the homicidal tire from that one movie would make for a good SCP. Robert from Rubber. Yeah, definitely a good call. Riff Tipton says, secure, contain, protect. You know it. Crow at the SOL says, are we just going to pretend Mark Zuckerberg doesn't belong on this list? Is he man or robot man? I think I'm gonna have to do some additional research and then I'll get back to you. And Dog Chain says, I miss George Costanza. The posters just don't hit that same level of creepy, lol. Now there's a throwback. Poor George had to go into storage, unfortunately, but he's been plotting his return. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to hop in the tub and dry my hair. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. No matter what, if you encounter any information about this thing, it'll drown. Or if you seem to be occupying the same